I am not telling this story to accuse anyone. I am telling it because silence, when carried too long, becomes heavier than guilt. There are towns in America that look harmless from the outside. White fences, quiet streets, churches on every corner, places where people wave at you but never look you in the eye for too long. This story belongs to one of those towns. I won't tell you its real name. Not because I am afraid, but because names don't matter when behavior stays the same. Let's call it Grayford, a small town in the southern part of Ohio, not far from the river. I lived there most of my life. I knew every shortcut, every rumor, every face that pretended not to know what it knew. And what I am about to tell you was never meant to be told. Grayford was the kind of town where news traveled faster than truth. By morning, everyone knew something had happened. By evening, everyone agreed not to ask what exactly it was. People here were not violent. They were polite. And that was the problem. Politeness can hide cruelty better than anger ever could. I was born into an ordinary family. No power, no influence. My father worked at a warehouse. My mother cleaned houses for people who spoke softly and paid late. We were taught one thing very clearly growing up. Don't get involved. Don't ask too many questions. And don't stand out. Grayford rewarded silence and punished memory. There was a man in town named Samuel Reed. I mention his name not because he was famous, but because everyone remembered him and pretended they didn't. Samuel was educated. He read books people here didn't trust. He asked questions people here didn't like. He worked as a substitute teacher, sometimes at the library, sometimes nowhere at all. People said he was different. In Grayford, different was not a compliment. Samuel noticed things. He noticed how certain families never faced consequences, how certain men were respected despite whispered stories, how churches collected money but ignored suffering. He talked, not loudly, not aggressively, but consistently, and that was enough. The first warning came quietly. Samuel lost his teaching assignments. Then the library job disappeared. Landlords stopped returning his calls. People smiled at him on the street, but their doors stayed closed. Grayford had decided something about Samuel, without ever saying it out loud. I remember the night everything changed. It was late. The town had settled into its usual artificial calm. Someone knocked on my door. It was Samuel. His face was pale, but not scared. More resolved. "I need to leave," he said. "Tonight." I asked why. He looked at me for a long moment and said, "Because when a town decides you are a problem, it never fixes the problem. It removes it." We drove toward the old river road, the same road where accidents happened without witnesses, the same road where stories ended without endings. Samuel didn't talk much. Before getting out of the car, he said something I still hear in my head. "If they ask tomorrow, they'll say I left by choice." Then he smiled. That smile wasn't relief. It was surrender. The next morning, Samuel Reed was gone. No missing person report, no investigation. Just a story everyone agreed on. He moved away. People like him never stay, probably for the best. And just like that, Grayford returned to normal. Years passed. The town grew slightly bigger. A few new stores, a few new churches. But the same families remained powerful. The same silence remained sacred. Sometimes, late at night, I would hear Samuel's voice in my head. Not accusing, not angry, just disappointed. Here is something people don't like to admit. A town doesn't need criminals to be guilty. It just needs enough decent people willing to look away. Grayford was full of decent people. I tried leaving. I did leave, actually. But places like this don't let you go cleanly. They follow you. In habits, in fear, in the way you hesitate before telling the truth. I came back after my father died. Same streets, same smiles. Different faces, same behavior. One evening, I walked past the old river road again. Nothing had changed. And that terrified me, because it meant nothing had been learned. This is why I'm telling this story now. Not because Grayford is unique, but because it isn't. There are hundreds of towns like this. Places where wrongdoing survives not because it is powerful, but because it is protected by politeness, by silence, by people saying, "It's not my place. I don't want trouble." That's just how things are. Samuel Reed never came back, but sometimes I think he never left. I think he became part of the road, part of the silence, part of the weight this town carries but refuses to name. And every time someone new arrives here, hopeful and unaware, Grayford watches them carefully, not to welcome them, but to decide how much truth they can tolerate before they too must disappear. I am not asking you to judge this town. I am asking you to recognize it. Because once you do, you can never pretend you didn't know. After Samuel Reed disappeared, something subtle changed in Grayford. Not on the surface. On the surface, everything looked the same. But silence became more organized. People learned exactly how much to say and when to stop. Stories were trimmed. Memories were edited. And those who remembered too clearly learned to speak more softly. Years later, I began noticing patterns. Every few years, someone would arrive in town with ideas, questions, or curiosity. Not criminals. Not troublemakers. Just people who noticed things. And slowly, almost gently, Grayford would push them to the edges. A job wouldn't renew. A landlord would suddenly need the house back. A rumor would begin, vague but effective. Nobody would claim responsibility. That was Grayford's genius. There was a phrase people used here. That's just how things work. It explained everything and nothing at the same time. One evening, after returning permanently to town, I met Martha Collins at the grocery store. She was old. Older than most memories people still admitted to having. She looked at me the way people look at mirrors they don't like. "You came back," she said. I nodded. "That road's still there?" she asked quietly. I knew which road she meant. Yes, she didn't smile. "Some roads," she said, "are built to carry things away." That night, I couldn't sleep. I started writing things down. Names, dates, small incidents people brushed off. What I found scared me more than any ghost story ever could. There was a pattern of vanishing without disappearance. No crimes, no police files. Just lives quietly redirected out of existence. I went to see the sheriff. A different man now. Same office, same framed photos. I asked him about Samuel Reed. He leaned back and sighed. "That was a long time ago," he said. "Some people don't fit in." I asked what that meant. He smiled politely. "Means they choose to leave." The conversation ended exactly there, because that's how conversations end in Grayford. I realized something then. This town didn't fear violence. It feared disruption. People here would rather protect a broken system than risk an honest one. A week later, I drove down the river road again. The same stretch. The same silence. I parked the car and stepped out. The wind moved through the trees like whispering. And for the first time, I spoke out loud. "I remember." The words felt heavy. But they didn't break me. They freed something. You see, Grayford's power depended on one thing. People believing they were alone in remembering. But memory shared becomes something else. It becomes truth. I began telling the story quietly. Not to everyone. Just to those who listened without rushing me. Some looked afraid. Some looked relieved. A few said nothing. But their silence was different now. One day, I received a letter. No return address. Inside, one line. Some of us never forgot either. That was when I knew the town was changing. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But enough. Grayford didn't collapse. No arrests. No headlines. But something shifted. People started asking small questions. Then slightly bigger ones. And the silence. It cracked. I don't know what happened to Samuel Reed. I don't know if he survived, or if the road truly took him. But I know this. His disappearance failed to erase him. Because stories, once told, refuse to vanish. If you ever pass through a quiet American town that feels too calm, pay attention. Notice who isn't mentioned. Notice which questions make people uncomfortable. And remember, evil doesn't always shout. Sometimes it smiles politely and asks you not to make things difficult. I am telling this story now because silence is a choice, and so is memory. This is my choice.